This one happened to be a darn good property, but we paid $20,100 for 15 acres, heavily pine trees in East Texas, and we had no idea that it had some producing mineral rights on it.
Mhm.
So that was a big windfall, and we ended up getting payout status for 5 months on gas in production. The gentleman who has been in his family over 100 years, when I first got a hold of him, he said, "You know, a guy out of California, a reverend." He said, "I have like 15 children. They all asking me for money." And he went on to tell me a story.
Today's program is sponsored by the Genius Network, a virtual community for driven women entrepreneurs who growing generational wealth and making a positive impact on their communities and the world. Forget the hustle culture. This is a space for like-minded women to connect, do business together, learn and grow together, and to give and receive support with virtual events, message boards, resources, on-demand courses, group coaching, and much more. We are seeking women entrepreneurs who understand that millionaire status isn't enough and who are committed to lift as they rise. Find us at thegeniuscultivator.com and click on the Genius Network, because you are a genius after all.
Hey there, everyone. I'm Kris Fleming, the Genius Cultivator, and you know I love to bring you fantastic stories with amazing people who are entrepreneurs, particularly those in the investment real estate space. I was introduced recently to my new friend, John Berlet, and he has some really great stories to share with us. He has kindly agreed to sit down and have a chat with me for your benefit. So I'm going to go ahead and shift it over to John. Hi, John. Thank you so much for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, Kris, and hello, everyone. My name's John Berlet. I am located in Rockport, Texas, which is a small coastal town near Corpus Christi, if anybody knows where Corpus is. I spent 44 years in Austin, sold my company. I had a registered investment advisory firm that I sold in 2021. During COVID, bought a motorhome. My wife and I traveled 17 states. And it was really nice because we were able to sleep in our own bed each night and not have to worry about COVID. So that's me and my background.
I am very envious of that. I have warned my husband that there is some of that in our future when our youngest leaves for college. I'm ready for it.
Well, I hope the time is good for you. When we bought COVID, there was motorhomes and RVs and fifth wheels were going sky high. Of course, I just sold my business, so money wasn't that big of an issue. But I just sold that motorhome 3 months ago.
Yeah.
The market's very, very soft. I got quite a bit less than I thought it was worth. But timing's everything.
I'm sorry. We do actually already have one.
Oh, you do? Okay.
So we'll see if that's the same one we have 5 years from now when our opportunity comes. But one of the first things that my husband Tim asked me when we met was, "Do you enjoy camping?" And the answer was absolutely yes. At the time, I was a single mom with 3 little girls, and camping was the only way I could afford to take them on vacation.
That was good. So y'all are incompatible about that.
Yes. Yeah. So that was good. John, tell us, please, how did you get interested in investment real estate, and what do you do now?
I have always had a passion for real estate. Bought my first house right after I got out of the Army on my GI Bill in 1976 for $32,000, I believe it was. And somebody from California, this was in Austin, somebody from California came by in about 2 years and offered me $48,000. And I said, wow. So we sold it. And back then, $12,000 profit was big in 2 years.
Right.
Anyway, I spent most of my career doing retirement income planning, investment advising, and all the time I had a passion for real estate. Now I'm managing a fund called Core Tax Deeds, and we're buying real estate at tax sales only in Texas for pennies on the dollar. And I've been doing that for a little over 30 years. My first property first tax sale I went to was in June of '93.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting story. In fact, I'll share with you that sale in Austin, Travis County. And they take place at the courthouse steps at 10 a.m. each first Tuesday of the month. And there was
Okay.
only 2 of us at the sale, 13 properties, just me and one other gentleman, an old sage real estate attorney by the name of Walter Winland. He's passed away now, but he looked at me and he said, whenever you don't bid, I'll bid. And if I bid, you don't bid. I said, okay. So we bought everything at opening bid. I bought 3 lots. He bought 10. And now that's known as collusion, and it's illegal, and you're not allowed to do that. But
Really?
yeah, that's called collusion. And I learned that. I'm a member of the National Tax Lien Association.
Okay.
And one of their annual conferences recently, they had somebody from the whatever federal agency, that regulates when people go in bidding for military contracts or government contracts. They're called collusion. You can't have conversation about, strategies in a public bidding situation. But
Wow.
I
Thank you for
did.
telling us straight on that.
I bought 3 properties. One of them, real interesting lot. I paid $1,100 and some change for a corner lot.
Okay.
And I sold it a few years later to the neighbor, which was the Catholic Church, for $38,000.
Wow.
$1,100, $38,000. You do the ROI on that, it's hard to even calculate.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
the other 2 I bought in that first time were on a golf course in the same community. And the story of how I found out about the auction, I read an article in the local paper. It said, Japanese economic woes reach around the world to the Texas Hill Country. And what had happened in the early 90 or 91, the Japanese had bought about half of the town. There was a golf course, the airport, a bunch of vacant lots. And they ran into some financial troubles and didn't pay the taxes. So it got my attention. And I went and sure enough, I was able to buy 3. And it's been in my blood ever since.
Wow. That's amazing. Now, for those of us who, I know that you and I had an introductory conversation very recently, and I have been investing in real estate since 1999, and have always been fascinated with it as well, but I've never dabbled in tax liens. Will you tell us how, just sort of a general overview of how that works?
Sure, happy to.
Thank you.
Every state is different. There's 50 states, and about half are called lien states, where you're not really it's not an ownership play, it's an interest play. You're bidding down the amount of interest. You're taking the place of the jurisdiction, the authority, the school, the county, the city, and the bidding goes on, and rarely does it end up with ownership. However, the other half of the states are deed states. So when you go delinquent in a deed state, that means the sheriffs have a foreclosure and they sell the property to the highest bidder. And we receive in Texas what's called a sheriff's deed day one, immediately. So you're just bidding how much you want to pay. The opening bid is the amount of the back taxes and the penalties and any attorney fees. So they have a starting bid price. Usually, and again, all I really know is Texas. I bought some in Colorado and one in Oklahoma, but by far my experience is Texas.
Okay.
And in Texas, they're usually 2 to 3 years delinquent on the taxes. The penalty kicks in the 7th month. So the taxes are due in January, and then by the 7th month, the penalties in some cases are higher than the actual amount of back taxes. And you probably know this, Kris, from your mortgage experience and background. The priority of property ad valorem property taxes and the position of the lien is superior to the mortgage position. And at least in Texas, the mortgage is wiped out, extinguished at the tax sale.
Wow.
So
the lender gets nothing.
correct.
Yeah.
The lender, if there ever is just some surplus, some overage, and there is often, like let's say that the bidding starts at 10,000 and property's worth 100,000, somebody pays 30,
Mhm.
that 20,000 is available to the lender and the heirs or the property owner. It's called surplus. That's a whole different business that
Gotcha.
very few people know about. But in Texas, again, we get a sheriff's deed subject to the prior owner's right of redemption.
Okay.
So what that means, if, for example, an heir or someone entitled to the property is able to pay what we paid plus a flat 25% penalty, they only have 6 months to do it, as long as it's not a homestead ag exempt, which they have 2 years to redeem it if it is a homestead or ag exempt. But non-homestead, non-ag exempt, it's a very short 180-day window for the redemption period.
Okay. So let me ask for some clarification to make sure I've got this right. Taxes are due in January. If not paid by July, uh, then penalties take place, and the property is then immediately put up for tax sale.
Typically, it's a 2 to 3 years of delinquent taxes.
Okay.
The taxing jurisdiction, we call them central appraisal districts in Texas. The
Okay.
taxing authorities who are responsible for collecting the taxes, they engage, or maybe the school districts, the taxing authorities engage a law firm to file suit. And that law firm, there's 3 of them in Texas that are pretty prominent. They are responsible for notifying anybody in the title chain, heirs, etc. And they kind of do a good job at trying to find the who's delinquent and collect those taxes, because that's
Mhm.
their responsibility.
Right.
But not often are I mean, they're not successful often, especially with the properties we focus on. And our fund is deceased property owners.
Gotcha.
It's a nice little niche that, one, deceased owners are less likely to redeem the property because
Seems so.
and what we find that often is the heirs are not, either they don't want to be found or
Yeah.
they can't agree. The one sibling might be willing to pay, but the other one don't want to pay, and it
Mhm.
just skyrockets. And with the valuations double in the last 5 years
Mhm.
across the board in Texas, property taxes is not quite doubled, but significantly higher. And again, we're really focused on dirt. We're not wanting to displace family, property owners from their
Sure.
home. Very seldom do we buy properties that have structures.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you so much for helping to clarify that. And let me say too, for everyone's edification, as a mortgage lender, I strictly work in investment real estate with you. I don't want to deal with having to turn down families who are looking to purchase their home. I had to do that for that was the shortest job I've ever had in my life. I was a primary residential mortgage originator, and it was the shortest job I ever had in my life. I did not care for it. So I deal strictly with investment real estate, and a lot of my real estate investors do not appreciate, they don't care for the fact that so many mortgage lenders want to escrow property insurance and property taxes in the payment. And they say, I want to pay that myself. So when you think about that, number one, a property tax lien takes a superior lien position to the lender. And number two, if there's no surplus, the lender gets nothing. It's no wonder the lenders want to escrow, right?
Sure, totally makes sense. The other little nuance about that part, Kris, is in Texas anyway, and
Mhm.
maybe it probably, I know it's different in every state, specific statutes, but here, what we have to look out for is IRS. That's the only lien. Well, actually, there's 2 liens that don't get extinguished. The
Okay.
IRS and the other one I call it a weed lien, but it's basically the grass. If you city has to mow the grass for years because it's growing, and they put the weed lien on the property, and it does not get extinguished at the sale.
Okay. What's the highest weed lien you've ever seen?
Ooh, I just had one in Corpus Christi in May, and it was, and then by the way, they'll negotiate, but
Okay.
it survived the sale, and it was $2,300 and some dollars.
Okay.
And this is kind of a cool story. Your audience will enjoy. So this house had a motorhome in the backyard.
Okay.
The owners had deceased 5 years ago. The daughter was on the title, affidavit of heirship, and I got a hold of her on the phone before the sale, found out the story, the dynamics. She'd been estranged from her folks. And long story short, this motorhome had a sign on it about abandoned, needed to be removed like 2 years prior to the auction. So it had fines associated with it, and they were really strict with me on getting this motorhome off the property. Long story short, I put it on Facebook. It'd been sitting for 20 years. It had 1985, 2000 license plates on it, Michigan license plates.
Okay.
And pretty bad shape inside, it all dilapidated, but I posted on Facebook free, and I had hundreds of people say they wanted to come get it, but nobody did. So I ended up I rented a mini excavator, and I tore that thing apart piece by piece down to the frame. And once I had all that debris, the motorhome, except the frame removed, I posted it again, free frame, and it went like that because this metal, you could take it to a scrap yard and probably, I'm going to guess $600-800 or $1,000. And so it was a big job cleaning up that motorhome, but the city, their lien survived that auction on that case. So IRS and weed liens, about the only things that can bite you on a tax sale, and it's best to be aware of it before the auction. Which one of the nuances in Texas again is we only get notice about 3 weeks at the most before the auction. Typically it's 2 to 3 weeks, so it doesn't really give you a lot of time to do your diligence, and especially if you're looking at hundreds of properties like we are. And so many times you're spinning your wheels looking at property that's going to get paid at the last minute, gets cooled. And so a lot of people get burned out, or it's hard work, really.
Yeah.
Unless you really know what you're doing. You can spin your wheels quite a bit.
So what do you do? How do you keep from getting frustrated and pulling the plug?
Well, I look at the appraisal records right away. So they post the property, and first thing I look at is if there's a homestead exemption. Is that meaningful to most states?
I have no idea. You're the first person I've ever discussed this principle with. So, like I said, I've been doing this for 30 years and didn't know about this technique.
Well, and you're dealing with commercial, so you wouldn't see it so much in residential.
Right.
But at least in Texas, we have what's called a homestead exemption. And what that does is it lowers the tax bill if it's your primary residence, and it's a big thing in Texas. Because we have no state income tax, and a pretty big burden on the property owners. In fact, that's a whole nother subject we probably don't have time to get into, but there's a big litigation case out of Denton County, Texas, that this guy's convinced the appraisal districts are being the tails wagging the dog. The schools are building $300 million football fields, and they're telling the appraisal that we need X to pay this bond debt, and some of these appraisal districts are not using proven appraisal method, and they're just, it's a whole different subject, political thing. But back to the homestead. First thing I do when I'm underwriting, and my team, I have 4 other partners that are out in the field, boots on the ground. looking at different areas in the state. We look at the spread between the assessed value and the delinquent tax, what the opening bid is.
Okay.
If there's enough spread, then we go to the next step. Look, see if there's a homestead, look at the address, where the tax bill's being mailed to. That's kind of a big clue. Do a drive-by. You can't go in if it's a house. For example, we've bought 23 properties in the last 14 months, and only 5 have houses on them. So again, it's not our primary focus, but if it has a house, we drive by the land. We do a physical inspection to assess the area. Next thing we do is look for environmental signs, because that's another big boogie bear. If it had a laundromat or some toxic situation.
Right.
And
Mechanic shops, dry cleaners.
Yep. That's all part of our underwriting up front. But again, that window is so small because you don't have a lot of notice of the properties. So we really wait till like the last week. For example, the sales the first Tuesday of the month. This month it was July 1st. I went down to a county where I bid live, and I took my laptop. I was also bidding online at the same time, different counties. But this there was probably 30 properties posted, and like the Friday before the auction on Tuesday, maybe 10 of them got pulled or paid.
Wow.
Right there people procrastinate. And they beg, borrow, and steal. And there's actual lenders out there that do tax lien lending.
Okay.
Have you heard of that?
I'm not surprised by that. You know what? I am surprised that I continue to be surprised at how many different strategies are applied to investing in real estate. So
that's so true. I'm the same way. When I started this fund, Kris, in April, we accepted our first capital in April of 24. So just a little over a year ago.
Okay.
I never even dawned on me about the surplus. I bought over 70 properties in my lifetime before I started this fund. And it just never even dawned on me what happens to the overage. It's called overage. And now with values being so crazy high, it's not uncommon to see surplus over $100,000. And these counties, they don't go out of their way to notify those rightful owners because it speaks to the counties. They get to keep it after 12 months in Texas. So, they make a half-hearted effort, to find the rightful heirs. But there's somebody in that family that rightfully entitled to that surplus. And again, that's an area that never even dawned on me.
Wow. Seems like a pretty significant conflict of interest too. Well, if you don't find the people, you get to keep it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we'll find them. We'll find them. I mean, what?
And then they make it kind of complicated. You have to, present affidavits and heirship, and some cases, when there's deceased rightful owners. Well, again, I'm not an attorney. I don't practice law and don't try to act like one, but it's complex.
Yeah, I actually have had money that was sheeted to the state of California, and found out about it. I think it was like 12 years later. So thank goodness they didn't have the 1-year redemption. It wasn't a lot of money. It was like $1,200, but yeah, nobody tried real hard to find me. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Over $1,200, and let alone 100,000. So,
yeah.
Of course, at that time in my life, $1,200 meant as much to me as $100,000 would today. So,
sure.
Well, thank you so much for explaining that to us. With that level of sort of time investment and risk, I guess I'm just grateful for you. Risk in terms of, doing all of the the research and then the property's pulled out from the auction. I guess I'm grateful on your behalf that it only happens once a month.
The sale,
Yes.
yeah, to give you a little time. Sure.
Yeah, you get
And
to
then-
recover the other 3 weeks.
Right. Yeah, and file protest. June, July in Texas, we have once a year, May, June, July is the protest time, and I have a background in that where you're protesting the valuation at the appraisal review board, and I had a property tax consultant license, represented over 400 property owners at the appraisal process, so I know that space really well. And
Wow.
I'm so busy just finishing up where it's a case where you present your evidence to this appraisal review board. They have to show you their evidence, and it's pretty cut and dry. When I show them a deed, I paid, for example, this month I paid $9,100 for a property that's on the tax rolls for $250,000, and I show them, this is a public auction, the bid results. And I don't always win, but I get it down, reduced significantly. So our holding costs are minimal. Or low.
Okay. Gotcha. So what's your next step after you acquire these properties? You've done all of this due diligence. Or let me back up. You've done all of this due diligence. You have the winning bid. Then what?
Then you go to a couple of things. There's a 6-month redemption period. Remember that. So if I buy a property July 1, that 6-month, 180-day redemption period doesn't start until my deed's recorded. It usually takes 2 or 3 weeks to get the deed recorded.
Okay.
That starts that 180-day period. Now, we own all the right, title, and interest the prior owner held, subject to their right of redemption. So we can sell the property right away. But nobody's going to pay us what we really want for it until that redemption period's over.
Sure.
And even beyond that, most title companies, you know how conservative they are. They will, in Texas, they're reluctant to issue a title policy until it's been 12 months from the sale.
Oh, okay. 12 months. Okay.
Yeah. And the reason for that is unnamed heirs can come out of the woodworks and they say, I was never served a notice. So they can make a claim, even though the redemption period is only 6 months, they can make a claim that they were never served notice, rightful notice, timely notice, but it's never happened in my 75 properties and 22 in this fund. Now I've had one property redeemed in this fund. It was one we bought in August of last year, got redeemed in the last week of the 6th month. And I've been talking to this prior owner the whole time. He said, I'm going to redeem it. I'm going to redeem it. And, they all say they're going to redeem it. They all, many of them feel like they have a story. Like, they never notified me. They all have a story. This one happened to be a darn good property. But we paid $20,100 for 15 acres, heavily pine trees in East Texas, and we had no idea that it had some producing mineral rights on it. So that was a big windfall, and we ended up getting payout status for 5 months on gas in production.
Okay.
So the gentleman who has been in his family over 100 years, when I first got a hold of him, he said, a guy out of California, a reverend. He said, I have like 15 children. They all asking me for money. And he went on to tell me a story.
This content is brought to you by the Genius Network, a virtual community for women entrepreneurs.
story. He was in the hospital when I got a hold of him.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so his story was that he wasn't notified. He had no idea the property was getting sold. But truth is, he had 3 properties, the one we bought and 2 more that were delinquent. And he can't convince me that he wasn't notified. He's on the title. He's the owner, and they had 3 or 4 years of delinquent taxes and send notice of his address of record. But anyway, turns out he's a baseball scout.
Oh.
And he coaches a baseball academy, and we end up talking quite a bit during the 6 months. Even since he redeemed it, I've been talking to him.
Okay.
And but it was the nice. We paid $20,100. He paid us $28,000, some change, on the last week of the 6th month. Plus, we got 5 mineral royalty checks. We were in payout status with the producer. And the reason I found out about this mineral interest, I went to the property after the sale and I saw a truck, 18-wheeler, coming out of the gate. And he had this big tank, and I stopped him and said, "What's going on?" He said, "Oh, I'm hauling 5 loads a day of salt water out of this property." And turns out the mineral rights were from the 50s. They had an old gas production from the 50s, but it pretty much had played out. The prior owner he probably wasn't getting any checks because he's so delinquent on his taxes.
Right.
And he probably, for whatever reason, he wasn't aware of the new production. They went in and did some fracking. So our checks we got each month were over, the lowest one was like $1,300.
Wow.
It was really a nice windfall while it lasted.
Yeah.
And we distributed those profits to our investors. We've made 2 distributions. We've sold 4 properties. Back to your question, what happens? All 4 of our sales were within 12 months, and some of them within 6 months. And I'll give you another example, a house where we bought in May.
Okay.
We already gutted it. We hired dumpster. We brought 3 dumpsters to clean it out. It was full of debris. The one with the motorhome.
Yes.
And we've gutted the kitchen, the bath, replaced 5 windows because it's all necessary. That penalty applies to anything we spend to repair and maintain. Now, in this case, Kris, we're going to add a second bath, and that prior owner could probably argue, "Hey, it's not necessary a second bath," and we're going to risk that amount of money. I've already hired the architect, the engineer, and the plans are about ready to submit, but it'll be about the 5th month before we do the addition.
Okay.
And minimize that risk. But again, I wouldn't do it if I didn't feel pretty confident that the chance of it being redeemed. We paid $29,000 for that property. Got another $10,000 in windows and clean out, and just gutting the kitchen and the bath. And we've done a lot more. Anyway, we own it. We control it. If it had renters, we could collect rent.
So for the edification of for everybody who is listening to our conversation today, you bought the property, you said for $24,000?
This house?
Yes.
$29,100.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to use an even $29,000.
Okay.
You bought the property for an even $29,000. And let's say you put $100,000 into it for maintenance and repairs and all of the necessary
expenses.
Efforts. Yes, thank you. And the prior owner comes along on day 179 to redeem. You're $129,000 into the property. What is the prior owner paying you to redeem?
Good question. If my calculator is correct, I just did the math. They have to pay us every penny we got in it, including insurance, legal, and it cost to maintain and repair plus a flat 25% penalty. So they would have to pay us 129 plus 25%, 172,000 and some change.
Wow.
That's pretty good. That's actually a 50% yield
Right.
over a year because it's only
Right.
6 months.
Right. So let this be a lesson, folks. First of all, always pay your property taxes. Keep an eye on that. Second of all, what an incredibly lucrative niche. You talked about how some people get frustrated and they walk away from it. And, you know, the first sale you went to, there were only 2 people there. I have said so many times to my clients, my children, my friends, myself on really hard days, look, if it was easy, everyone would do it. And, that is so amazing, John. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Let me add something along those lines too, Kris.
Please.
Nowadays, it's not uncommon for there to be hundreds of bidders at the auction.
Gotcha.
You take a big metro like Houston, and part of that's because there's these so-called gurus running around the country putting on seminars and
Yes.
selling classes and education and weekend courses, kind of like the old Rich Dad Poor Dad deal.
Yes.
And they're doing a good job educating the people of what's going on. But you know, people go to the auction, they'll see 80 bidders, and some of them are young and dumb, and some of them are hedge funds. They got more money than they got sense, and there's no barking.
Yeah.
So that's going on, number one. Online, you don't know how many bidders. They could be anywhere in the world. And in fact, you don't know till it's over. And at the end of the auction, I'll tell you a story about this one. I bought the house for $29,100.
Yes.
When the auction was over, I could go and see how many bidders, who was bidding how much, and I was willing to bid about 45 was my max on that.
Okay.
As is, it's worth 110, 115. It's a good neighborhood. It's the ugliest house on the block, half a mile from the mall, and the area's turning over really nicely. When we had the second bath, it's a $200,000 house, easy. But the auction results. I saw where there were 2 other bidders that was the opening bid, $29,100. What I got it for?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and there was 2 other bidders, but both of their bids were rejected. And the reason, I'm not sure, but I can guess, you have to have so much deposit on hand with the auction house. Either they didn't have enough deposit, or maybe they overspent what they had at they go in order. Maybe they reached their deposit limit, but whatever reason, the 2 other bidders that were wanting to bid were rejected. So we again got lucky, and then we're in a smaller tertiary market. That's where we're staying 2 counties away from the metros.
What's your strategy to make sure that you get some properties with all of this competition?
Well, number one, we're very disciplined. We know before the auction our max, what we're going to bid, and we don't get caught up emotionally and attached to any property. And I did notice this month in July, the auction I went to in the Valley, there was a lot of bidders on the houses, but the dirt, no bidders.
Interesting. When you acquire the dirt, the property with the land without any structures, I'm going to hesitate using the terminology raw land because that can mean so many different things depending on who's using the terminology. So when you acquire it, how long do you generally sit with it, or what do you do next? Do you market it for sale? Do you have a particular holding period? What's your next step?
Okay, depends on the parcel, but for example, the 4 we've sold, we had 1 redeemed, and we've sold 4. Of the
Mhm.
4, they were all within the 6-month or right at the 6-month redemption period, the 4 we sold. And it was all in May 1st of this year.
Okay.
One of them was a all cash deal.
Okay.
The other 3 we sold with down payment and carried the notes on their finance.
Very nice. Now you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Let me tell you how we
That's where
structured.
I can jump into the conversation. I know what's going on now.
Yeah. So of those 3, one of them was a house, but we tore the house down. It wasn't savable. So we demoed the house, and that prior owner lived across the street with her father, and she wouldn't go in the house. She had nightmares. She was scared of the house.
Oh my.
So she had left it like 7 years ago. I didn't go in it before we bid on it, but I bought it for the dirt.
Right.
It was pretty shabby. And we bought it for $14,000. I had to demo it, another $5,000 with demo costs. So I got 19,000, let's say 20,000 in it.
Okay.
So I ended up selling it owner finance. The next door neighbor lady on this side, her daughter lived on the other side.
Okay.
So they had this property we bought on both sides, and it just made sense to, expand their compound.
Yeah.
So we sold it for $36,000 to that lady. She's paying. This one's a straight 48-month amortization, 700 and something a month, 10% interest, and the other 2 are kind of back to back. They're 2.6 acres each.
Okay.
And I found 2 different buyers, young men, pipe fitters, banking. They're making $150,000 a year at the local refineries, and they want to build homes. So I owner financed those guys, and they put 20% down, 20-year AM with 2-year balloons.
Okay.
So most likely they'll balloon before the first year, because I've been by there. They're already moving dirt, and they want to build homes.
Yeah. Yeah.
For their families. So I expect they'll balloon, in the first year.
Yeah. 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 You mean pay off or refinance?
Yeah, they'll get their own financing, and we'll get paid.
So sometimes we have some very new folks in our audience. So I'm just going to take a moment to help folks understand that a 20-year amortization. So like typically when you buy a house, you're on a 30-year mortgage. That's a 30-year amortization. That's 360 equal payments every month until the note is paid for, the loan is paid off. A 20-year amortization means that same amount is squished into 240 equal payments until the loan is paid off. When you have a 2-year balloon, that means that you've paid the first 24 months of 240 payments, and then the full remaining amount is due. And that's a balloon. So typically what people do is they'll refinance, or they have some mechanism where they're going to have a flush of cash and they're going to pay it off. In this case, they're likely to roll it into what will be the permanent financing of the home once it's constructed. So they've got a seller carryback note on this real estate, this lot that they've purchased. They'll acquire construction financing for the dwelling. And then once the dwelling is completed, they'll convert all of those monies typically to your standard conventional 30-year mortgage, 360 equal payments. So I remember when I was a very young banker and I started hearing about a 20-year amortization with a 3-year balloon or a 5-year arm, and I was like, what? It's 20 years, but it's due in 5 years? What is that? How does that math doesn't math? So I wanted to be sure to share with folks who may not be as familiar. Thank you for sharing that with us. So 3 out of 4 are seller financed then?
And keep in mind, they're right at the 6-month threshold. We conveyed a title policy. I found a underwriter that would issue a title policy and take exception to the remaining redemption period,
Okay.
which is a huge fine for me in my
Right.
business. Because as I told you, and you know, under these underwriters are very conservative
Yes.
people and
Yes.
cautious in their insurance, and they
Right.
take risk, and they have to charge for that risk. But more also is we're just now coming into where by the end of this year we're going to see some great gains. Even on the 4 sales, they're all triple digit ROIs.
Wow.
And
That's amazing.
3 of them are unrealized because of the
Mhm.
balloons.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually, you know, assuming, and we've had 2 payments already, the June and July, and I'm getting them by Zelle. You know what Zelle is?
I do. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all
Kind of
3
like
of them.
Venmo. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that Cash App stuff, but I know
Uh-huh.
Zelle. I think it's similar.
Yes.
And I got all 3 of these buyers to set up Zelle, and all 3 of them for the first 2 months made their Zelle payment on or before the first of the month.
Fantastic. That's what we as lenders always want. Now I've had so many. I have I functioned as a loan underwriter for a number of years. I was in banking as a loan underwriter for investment real estate, and then I ran my own mortgage company for investment real estate. But I also do private lending, joint venturing. Ran a private equity fund, and so a lot of underwriting involved there. One of the things that people often say to lenders is, what are you so worried about? If I don't pay you, you get the property back. And what's difficult sometimes to help people understand is, I don't want the property. If I wanted the property, I wouldn't be selling it to you in the first place. I don't want the property. I want to be paid. That sort of pattern of on time or early payments is always very exciting for a lender. We know when the first couple of payments start getting late, it starts to give us a little bit of anxiety and concern. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good for you.
That's a
That's
good
awesome.
point. A question I've always had in my mind is, I've always heard traditional institutional lenders, they don't want the property. When it goes in default, they really don't. But I think in my mind, why wouldn't I? If it's got so much equity in it. Of course, I'm coming from an investor standpoint, and I don't understand the mentality of why I wouldn't want the property back.
Yeah. Well, coming from a banking background, of course, the banks are not real estate investors. In fact, I believe that banks are actually very poor lenders in general on investment real estate, because the business model of investing in real estate does not align with banks' model of doing business. So part of the reason I opened a mortgage brokerage for investment real estate is that I consistently could offer much more favorable products, lending products, to my real estate investor clients than I could in a bank environment. Banks are typically 20 years amortized. The DSCR loans are typically 30 years amortized. Well, when you take the same amount of money and you stretch it out over a longer time, that makes a lower payment. And so that makes the property cash flow better, particularly when you're talking about leased real estate, right? You've got tenants of some sort, whether residential or commercial. I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. But additionally, the interest rates that I can offer that are 30-year fixed are typically lower than what a bank will offer on an ARM or a balloon. So you have a longer fixed term with a lower interest rate. It helps your cash flow quite a bit. That's what I mean when I say that I don't believe that in general, banking, the business model of banking is in alignment with the business model of investment real estate. The other portion of that is the assets that banks own, acquire, hold are subject to, they're all subject to FDIC insurance and federal regulation and state regulation, so on and so forth. When they have bad assets on their balance sheets, that affects how much they have to hold in deposits, right? You're familiar with the concept of fractional reserve lending. So for every dollar I have out in lending, I have to have, let's say, 50 cents on deposit, just as a nice round number. Well, if I start having bad assets that aren't paying, then that means that the FDIC tells me I have to increase my reserves, my cash on hand. So now for every dollar that I have out in loans, I have to have 75 cents on deposit. Well, you can see where that has a big effect on how much I can lend out when you start putting a lot of zeros behind it. And so the business model is not structured for that, kind of like, why I'm trying to think of a good analogy. Why can't I buy cows at Walmart instead of just hamburger, right? Well, because that's not the business model of Walmart. So I would say that's just not the business model of banking, but it's also very undesirable for banks because of what it does to their requirements for loan loss reserves. So they're much better off to get rid of the asset to not have to affect their deposit balances and their FDIC insurance.
Great point. Yeah, and it also affects their ratings.
Exactly.
If they have that considered bad asset on the books.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yes. Now, for me personally, I will say I, as an underwriter and a lender, I have chosen that I've had rental properties. I have one right now that I am in full management of. I strongly prefer to be the silent partner, the investor, the quiet party who is not in charge of anything except the finances. Because what I found is I have a tendency to be a little overly soft-hearted, and I just give away the store.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I'm not a very good landlord because I'm like, oh, you'll catch it up next month, and then that creates problems pretty quickly. So I recognize in myself, same reason I don't do primary residential real estate lending is I don't have the emotional fortitude for it.
Yeah, and it can be even today, probably more than ever.
Yeah, with business purpose, the numbers are what the numbers are, what the numbers are. And we don't have to have feelings about it. So I can deal with it.
Do we have any time for one more story, or
I wish you would. Absolutely, please.
Okay. I'd like to share a interesting property I bought in 2008. You remember that year?
Oh, I do very clearly.
Okay. So I bought a 44 unit apartment complex in July of 2008. Bought it right. In fact, there was back then, we had magazines, some kind of finance magazine, and it said the two hottest real estate markets in the U.S. were Manhattan, New York, and this place in Texas called Port Arthur.
Okay.
This was near Beaumont. It's a refinery place, and most Texans call it the armpit of Texas. But the market was hot because there's so many jobs and blah blah blah. So I bought the 44-door unit. It's outside the city, a city called Bridge City, in Orange County, Texas. Sounds pretty nice, don't it? Orange County, but it's not. 45 days after we closed on the property, Hurricane Ike made landfall, and it hit in Port Arthur, Texas, and got this county and our apartment unit. All of the first floor units were like 4 foot of water. The whole city was underwater.
Oh.
So of course we were fully insured. We had a loan. The lender required that. We talked about earlier. And we bought it to rehab. It was a value add before value adds were cool. But so we were fully insured. FEMA was there. We had to deal with managing that claim, and long story short, we made out okay. But the economy, because the jobs all left that town, when it came back, it took a full 10-year hold before we were able to get out of that property, and we didn't make anything, but we didn't lose it. So
Wow.
the reason is we value added with the insurance money, which was our plan. We didn't plan to use insurance money, but
Right.
when the market went down and the economy came back, a lot of younger families wanted to have single family homes, and they were going for a bargain because of the downturn. And so the apartment ended up being a lot longer hold. My point is, nothing's foolproof.
For
Even
sure.
real estate.
Oh, for sure. One thing that I like about real estate, if you don't mind my sharing for just a minute, I have invested in securities, and I've always been fascinated by securities. In fact, when I was a little girl, this is such a nerdy story. When I was a little girl, like 9-10 years old, I made some money with like car washes or something like that. I don't know. I got paid for raking leaves in the neighborhood. But I was so excited because I bought myself a subscription to the Wall Street Journal. And I had no idea what I was reading, but I believed that the information that I needed to be successful was in that publication. So I would just read it like I was reading the encyclopedia. Like, I don't understand this, but eventually I'm going to catch on to this language just by exposure. So Michael J. Fox and his character on Family Ties, he and I had that in common, was that as children, we both had subscriptions to the Wall Street Journal. I think, in fact, his character on Family Ties is the one that inspired me to do that.
Well, I'm sure that information planted in your mind and came to harvest. Yeah.
To believe that my money went to a good investment. But what I've come to realize is, even though I make these jokes about being overly emotional, it's funny because there's a little bit of truth to it, right? And so I have discovered for myself, I really like real estate because I want something that I can go touch. I like knowing that I can go touch it.
A hard asset.
Yes. So I own very little in securities anymore.
Me too.
It's all in real estate, with one exception. I've maintained all of my holdings of Berkshire Hathaway because it's done great. They have a pretty good track record, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, totally with you on the, I've never been a big, I'm a registered investment advisor.
I know.
And I didn't, it wasn't my, wasn't anything I was comfortable with, securities. In fact, I had an RIA firm and got audited by the state securities board. And I was focused on something called fixed indexed annuities, which is an insurance product. Real safe, real blah. You can't lose your principal, but I was the safe money guy. And in 2008, when everybody's market all the securities tanked, I'm the hero with my clients.
Right.
So they're in this safe product. But the auditors would come into my office because I'm in Austin and they're in Austin, and they go through your files. They kind of find reasons to what they call issue you some kind of a
I call it justifying their existence.
Yeah, right. That's part of it. The deficiency. They find something called deficiencies. And anyway, thankfully, I'm regulated. I am still today regulated by the Department of Insurance. Although with this offering, I'm managing this fund. It's under the SEC, under regulation crowdfunding. So now I'm still under the scrutiny and totally have to pass background checks and this and that, which is rightfully so for protect the investors.
Yes. And as a licensed mortgage broker, I'm not just a registered lender like so many folks who work for FDIC insured institutions. I'm fully licensed. And
Yeah, it's very intense.
my hat is off to you, sir.
Yeah.
I had several people reach out to me, try to talk me into getting a life issue license for insurance. And I'm like, oh, like I have enough licenses right now. Good. I don't even want to renew my driver's license at this point. I think I let my fishing license expire.
Wonderful.
Well, before we wrap up, I'm so glad that you brought us back around to the fund, because I think it's important for people to know some of the methods that are available for investing in real estate. And let me say very clearly, I am not a registered advisor, a certified financial planner, an accountant, an attorney, any of those things. So I cannot endorse any products or investments, but I can certainly allow John the stage to give us just a little bit of an overview and how to get in touch for more information.
Great. So the offering I have on that I manage is called regulation crowdfunding. You do not have to be an accredited investor. It's a very low minimum. However, one of the compliance things is I'm not allowed to discuss the terms of the offering in any kind of advertising space. All the terms have to be disclosed and are disclosed on our offering portal, which is a broker-dealer intermediary. So it's frustrating to me because we have some exciting terms. We share, and I'm so limited what I can say about the terms because of the regulations, but happy to share that portal. It's invest.coretaxdeeds.com.
Okay.
And
so invest.coretaxdeeds.com.
Correct. Of course, we have our website, and it has some information on it, coretaxdeeds.com, but all the terms of the offering must be disclosed on this intermediary portal, which is maintained by a firm called Silicon Prairie in the crowdfunding space. And it's all on there. And there's some very attractive terms that I encourage everyone to take a look at.
Well, thank you, John. I just love so much chatting with you. I really appreciate it.
As well, Kris. Yeah,
absolutely.
To share you can tell I have a passion about what I know. Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Wonderful.